I just got the last one in, went pretty slick. They're really, relatively pretty easy to take in and out. So.
Nice.
Very nice.
Good, Kevin, fire.
A surprising disclosure is made by Kevin Beets, a young mining heir, which causes the family's mining history to be put to the test. Because he had been Tony Beets' right-hand man for many years, he proudly carried the weight of the Beets name with him wherever he went. On the other hand, he was in possession of a secret that he concealed more deeply than any gold mine he had ever pursued. Even though he had learnt about mining from his father, Tony Beets, when he was growing up, he couldn't shake the notion that something wasn't quite right. Although Kevin had disregarded this for a number of years, he eventually came to the realization that he did not exactly fit in with the rest of the family as he continued to think about it. In spite of the fact that his siblings had Tony's fiery temper and distinct looks, he never quite felt like he belonged in the group. Kevin made the decision to investigate the whispers after he had ignored them for a number of years. The Beets family was all about sticking together through thick and bad, so questioning his status in the family felt like breaching some unspoken code. It was not an easy move to call into question his position in the family. The journey that Kevin Beets takes to discover his true identity and break away from the legacy that the Beets family has left behind is an enthralling story of family, love, and memories that are shared. Tony, who was the son of the Beets family, was forced to confront the reality that the person he had selected to succeed him was not his heir. The decision was not made out of resentment or hatred. Rather, it was made in order for him to discover who he was and to leave the family company behind. It was difficult for Tony to let go of a part of himself, but he was confident that this was the best course of action. After delegating his responsibilities to his siblings, he began to investigate alternative avenues of endeavor, contemplating industries that were unrelated to gold mining or mining in general.
We only start this year, that is pretty nice.
We need 163 more ounces to pay for the dredge, so...
For last year.
For last year.
Tony had spent his entire life working in mining. Therefore, it was not an easy job for him. Even though he knew it was the best course of action, he felt as like he was abandoning a part of himself when he walked away. Even Tony eventually came to respect his decision and realized that it took a lot of courage for him to leave the only life he had ever known and begin one that was completely different. His trip was not without its challenges, and there were times when he questioned his own abilities and questioned whether or not he had made a significant error. In spite of the fact that there were times when he felt entirely isolated, since he did not have the support system of the family business. There were also times when he experienced a fresh and unrestricted sense of liberty. There was a lot of difficulty in Tony's trip, and he found himself in the process. Due to the fact that his siblings had grown up sharing duties and goals for the future, the person who made the decision was aware that his decision would have repercussions for the rest of the family. It was their assumption that one day, all of them would be working together under Tony's direction, ensuring that the Beets name would continue to be respected in the mining industry. As Tony and his other children maintained their mining operations, they were resolute in their determination to not allow this to shake their foundation. Tony was able to accept his son's decision to leave, despite the fact that it was difficult for him to do so. He understood that his son was not going to be walking away from a lot of hard work. Now that he was free from the burden of carrying the legacy of his family on his shoulders, he was able to leave behind the expectations and pressures that had been placed on him. In an effort to discover something that was meaningful and mirrored who he was not, he investigated a wide range of fields, from new ventures in the field of technology to initiatives aimed at protecting the environment. He was confronted with a great deal of uncertainty as he navigated this new phase of his life. He questioned whether or not he was being foolish by leaving behind a life that many others would be envious of. Tony Beets, a mining entrepreneur,
This should mean that the transmission is now free to move, which should allow the engine to move, which should allow the whole thing, to run. Yeah, she should be good to go at this point.
had made the decision to quit his family's company, and he discovered support in people and places that he had not anticipated. He was reminded by his friends that his worth was not dependent on his surname, and they urged him to keep going forward. The strength to persevere through the uncertainties was provided to him by this support. Eventually, he started working on projects that he was enthusiastic about, and as a result, he learned to trust his intuition, take risks, and be open to the unknown. Kevin Beets, the son of Tony Beets, made the decision to leave the family business after spending many years following in his father's footsteps in the realm of business. As a result of the decision, the firstborn son was not only ignored, but also marginalized, which presented a significant setback. The dissatisfied son made the decision to leave the family business behind and head out in a different direction. Mining is not a game in which you can simply pick up and begin again. Not only do you need money, but you also need equipment and land. As a former protege, Tony Beets sought assistance from Parker Snobble, who had been Tony Beets' adversary for a very long time. As a shrewd businessman, Parker sold the disillusioned era rock truck that was desperately needed for the price of $110,000. In doing so, he not only sent a loud message to his father, but also to the entire mining industry. On account of the fact that Tony Beets had always been a larger-than-life figure in the mining industry, he did not take kindly to this idea. Tony Beets had always been a strong, ambitious, and unyielding personality, and now he had to go through the experience of watching his own flesh and blood make decisions that felt like a personal challenge. This was a difficult experience for him. Tony Beets was confronted with a situation that was not merely another professional issue. Rather, it was a personal problem for him.
Those are 11 grand.
11 grand is a good deal for that one.
You don't need to pay for anything now. You start a tab.
Appreciate that, really do.
I'm more than happy. I know how hard.
Because he had to watch his own flesh and blood carry out behaviors that appeared to be a personal challenge. It was clear that the relationship between Parker and the member of the Beets family, with whom he had a long-standing quarrel, was more than just a business transaction. It was a fracture in the Beets family. Tony and Parker have had a number of fights during the course of their relationship, over the course of many years, regarding a wide range of topics, ranging from mining techniques to property disputes. As a result of the fact that Parker's eldest child was now on Parker's side, the rivalry gained a new advantage, which added fuel to a fire that was already rapidly spreading. The high degree of tension required those who were left behind to perform exceptionally well in order to avoid being left behind. Following her brother's departure from the family business, Monica took on greater responsibilities and dealt with the fallout of her brother's departure. She assumed the position of chief executive officer of the family business. Tony, an old-school miner who had created his empire from nothing, and Parker, a younger sharp operator, were caught in the middle of the war. Tony had built his empire from almost nothing. In a world where giants were the dominant force, the son who had become estranged from his family made an effort to carve out his own space in the world. Monica had a lot on her plate as she attempted to show that she could handle the pressure that was being placed on her. The fact that her brother had vanished and Tony was still in the process of grieving over the betrayal contributed to an even greater increase in the level of tension during this time. Following the intensification of the race between Tony and Parker,
Lay it along the side of the property and discharge it a little further down away from our side. Get it?
fans of Gold Rush began paying great attention to each and every gold haul, setback, and maneuver that Tony and Parker made. In spite of the fact that Tony made an effort to appear calm in front of other people, it was clear that he was not happy behind the scenes during the situation. The Beets' reputation had been cultivated over many years, but all of a sudden, he had the sensation that it was beginning to deteriorate. A chunk of his lineage was being taken away from his son, and for someone like Tony, who had put everything he had into his career, this was a difficult pill to swallow. Tony had put everything he had into his job. Parker, who is noted for his intelligence, played his cards well by creating a collaboration with the Beets, who were abandoning the project he was working on. The result of his actions was not just the acquisition of a new ally, but also the deepening of a married edge within the Beets family. Tony increased his attempts to demonstrate that the Beets brand could still be dominant in the market, and the Beets staff continued to make headway in their efforts to demonstrate this. The tension was palpable, and everyone was conscious of the fact that there would be a change in the course of events now that their former crewmate was no longer present.